Maya Nielsen stood at her office window on the 42nd floor, watching the late afternoon sun paint golden streaks across the Chicago skyline. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman in her early 30s, dressed in a tailored navy suit that spoke of careful attention to detail, a habit that had helped her rise to senior risk analyst at Morton & Shaw Financial within just 6 years. But today, that same attention to detail was causing her stomach to knot with worry. The notification from Jason's business grant had arrived that morning, $500,000 to launch his automotive software startup. It should have been a moment of pure joy, the culmination of 3 years of late nights and countless pitch meetings. Instead, Maya found herself remembering the strange phone call she'd overheard 2 nights ago, Jason's voice tight with an anxiety she'd never heard before. "I understand the terms," he'd said, pacing in their home office when he thought she was asleep. "The timeline isn't negotiable." "I see. Yes, I'll make it work." The call had ended abruptly when Jason noticed her shadow in the doorway. His explanation, just finalizing some details with potential investors, felt rehearsed, hollow. It wasn't the only change she'd noticed. The Jason who had always been ready with a joke, who made pancake art with their 7-year-old twins on Sunday mornings, had been replaced by someone who startled at incoming text messages and spent hours staring at spreadsheets with haunted eyes. Maya's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from Jason, "Great news about the grant. Taking clients to dinner tonight to celebrate. Don't wait up." Her fingers hovered over the keypad. They'd always celebrated their victories together, splitting a bottle of wine after the twins were asleep, planning their future in whispered conversations full of hope and possibility. Now, it felt like Jason was building walls, brick by careful brick. "Everything okay?" Maya turned to find Sarah Chen, her colleague and closest friend at the firm, standing in her office doorway. Sarah had an uncanny ability to read people, a skill that made her both an excellent fraud investigator and a terrible person to hide things from. "Jason got the grant," Maya said, forcing a smile. "That's amazing." Sarah's enthusiasm faded as she studied Maya's face. "So why do you look like someone just asked you to audit the entire company by yourself?" Maya hesitated. Putting her fears into words felt like betrayal, but they burned in her throat, demanding release. "Something's wrong with Jason. He's different. Secretive. Last week, I found an envelope in his desk with $50,000 in cash. When I asked about it, he said it was an advance from an investor who preferred to deal in cash." Sarah's expression sharpened with professional interest. "Cash investments are red flags in our line of work, Maya. You know that." "Of course I know that," Maya snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry. It's just. Jason's not stupid. He's worked in software development for a decade. He knows how business works. Which means either he's lying to you," Sarah said gently, "or someone's forcing his hand." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number: "Tell your husband time's running out. He knows what we want." Maya's hands began to shake. She showed the message to Sarah, whose face went pale. "Maya," Sarah said, her voice low and urgent, "I think it's time you tell me everything you know about Jason's new business partners." The sun had dipped below the horizon now, leaving the office in shadow. As Maya began to speak, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the gathering darkness, a clock was ticking down to something terrible. That night, after tucking the twins into bed, Maya sat alone in their kitchen, surrounded by the comfortable trappings of upper-middle-class success: stainless steel appliances, marble countertops, family photos arranged in careful symmetry on the walls. Everything looked exactly the same as it had a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. But now she could feel the cracks spreading beneath the surface, threatening to shatter the life they'd built. Her laptop was open to Jason's business plan, each page filled with his familiar, meticulous projections. But between the lines of code and market analysis, she sensed a different story waiting to be discovered. Maya began to dig deeper, her analyst's mind cataloging discrepancies, following the trail of numbers like breadcrumbs in a dark forest. She didn't hear the garage door open, didn't realize Jason was home until his shadow fell across her screen. "What are you doing?" His voice was eerily calm, but his hands were clenched at his sides. Maya looked up at her husband, at the stranger wearing his face, and made a decision. "I think," she said quietly, "that you need to tell me who really gave you that grant money." The silence that followed felt like the moment before a storm breaks, electric, dangerous, and filled with the promise of revelation. Jason stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, his expression shifting from anger to resignation. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, filled with unspoken fears and broken trust. Finally, he sank into the chair across from Maya, his shoulders slumping under an invisible weight. "I never wanted to involve you in this," he whispered, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "I thought I could handle it myself, protect you and the kids. But now..." His voice cracked. Maya reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of touching his trembling hands. "You don't have to protect me, Jason. We're supposed to face things together. Whatever this is, we can find a way through it." He looked up, his eyes filled with a desperation that made her heart ache. "Remember Tom Bradley from college? He approached me 6 months ago, said he had investors interested in my software. The numbers were incredible, better than anything I'd seen. But they needed quick results, wanted to move fast." Maya felt her professional instincts kick in. The cash in the envelope? A down payment. But it wasn't from legitimate investors. "Tom, he's involved with people who want to use my company as a front. They've already put $2 million into offshore accounts." The grant announcement was just cover, making everything look legitimate. The pieces started falling into place, the late-night calls, the nervous behavior, the sudden influx of cash. "Money laundering," Maya said softly. "They're using you to clean dirty money." Jason's face crumpled. "I didn't know at first. By the time I figured it out, they had everything, photos of the kids at school, your daily schedule, details about your family. They said if I went to the police." A noise from upstairs made them both jump. The sound of small feet padding across the floor, followed by Emma's voice, "Mommy. I had a bad dream." Maya watched Jason's face transform, love and terror warring in his expression. She stood up, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I'll be right there, sweetheart. Go back to bed." Before heading upstairs, she turned to Jason. "We're going to fix this. But from now on, no more secrets. These people don't get to destroy what we've built." The next morning, Maya arrived at work early, her mind racing with possibilities. She hadn't slept, spending hours after Jason's confession cataloging everything she knew about financial crimes and organized money laundering. Her years of risk analysis had taught her that every criminal enterprise had weak points, it was just a matter of finding them. Sarah was waiting at her office door, concern etched on her face. "You look like hell." "We need to talk," Maya said, ushering her friend inside and closing the door. "But first, I need you to promise me something. What I'm about to tell you, it doesn't leave this room. And I need access to every financial database we have." As Maya recounted Jason's confession, she watched Sarah's expression shift from shock to determination. When she finished, Sarah was silent for a long moment. "You know we should go to the authorities," she finally said. "Not yet," Maya replied. "These people have eyes everywhere. One wrong move and..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we do this carefully. Build an airtight case before anyone makes a move." She pulled out her laptop. "Start with Tom Bradley. Everyone leaves a trail, especially people who think they're too smart to get caught. For the next several hours, they dug through financial records, corporate filings, and property deeds. Tom's name led them to a web of shell companies, each connection revealing new players in an increasingly complex scheme. Maya's phone buzzed, another text from the unknown number, meeting tonight. Blue Harbor Marina. 8 p.m. Tell Jason to bring the paperwork. Her hands began to shake, but this time it wasn't from fear. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a spark of hope. Every message, every demand was evidence. And she knew better than most how evidence could become a weapon. She was about to respond when Sarah grabbed her arm. Maya, look at this. On the screen was a news article from 3 years ago, a small piece about a software developer found dead in his garage. The police had ruled it suicide. But the victim had been working on a project remarkably similar to Jason's, and one of his last calls had been to a number Maya recognized from Jason's phone records. The implications hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money anymore. They were dealing with people who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate problems permanently. As if reading her thoughts, Sarah squeezed her hand. We need help. Real help. I know someone, he used to work organized crime before going private. He's discreet, and he owes me a favor. Maya stared at the article, at the face of a man who had probably thought he could handle things on his own too. Make the call, she said. But Sarah, if anything happens to me, promise you'll protect my family. Nothing's going to happen to you, Sarah replied fiercely. We're going to find these bastards' weak spot, and then we're going to hit them so hard they'll never see it coming. Outside her office window, storm clouds were gathering over the city. Maya watched them roll in, thinking about Jason at home with the twins, about the invisible noose tightening around their necks. She had always been good at analyzing risk, at finding patterns in chaos. Now those skills weren't just about protecting corporate assets, they were about saving everything she loved. Her computer pinged with an incoming email. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line made her blood run cold. We know what you're doing. Last chance to back off. Maya straightened her spine, clicked delete, and turned back to her research. They thought they were dealing with a desperate housewife trying to save her husband. They were about to learn they were facing something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Maya spent the next week building a fortress of information, each detail a potential shield against the shadows threatening her family. She worked late into the nights, her office becoming a war room of financial records, surveillance photos, and carefully mapped connections. Sarah's contact, a former detective named Marcus Reynolds, proved invaluable, teaching them to think like the predators they were hunting. These organizations, Marcus explained over a secure line, they're like icebergs. What you see is just the surface. The real danger lies beneath. His voice carried the weight of experience, of battles fought in similar shadows. At home, Maya watched Jason struggle to maintain normalcy for the twins. He still made their lunches, checked their homework, but his hands shook when he thought no one was looking. At night, she'd find him sitting in the darkened kitchen, staring at his phone like it might explode. The breaking point came on a Wednesday afternoon. Maya was reviewing security footage from the Blue Harbor Marina when her office phone rang. It was Emma's school. Mrs. Nielsen. There was an incident during recess. A man was taking pictures of the playground. When security approached, he mentioned Emma by name. The world tilted sideways. Maya heard herself responding calmly, making the right noises, but inside she was screaming. By the time she reached the school, Jason was already there, holding both twins with a desperate intensity that broke her heart. That night, after the children were asleep, Maya found Jason in their bedroom, packing a bag. I have to go, he whispered, not meeting her eyes. If I disappear, maybe they'll leave you alone. The business, the money, they can have all of it. Maya stepped between him and the door. That's not how this works. They'll never let you just walk away. And I won't let you face this alone. You don't understand, Jason's voice cracked. I saw what they did to the last person who tried to expose them. Tom showed me pictures. They didn't just kill him, they destroyed everything he loved first. Maya took his trembling hands in hers. I understand better than you think. Sarah and I found the connection to David Chen's death. We know about the other companies they've infiltrated, the pattern of intimidation and violence. But we also found their weakness. She led him to her home office, where a wall of evidence revealed the scope of their investigation. Bank transfers, property records, surveillance photos, a web of connections that pointed to a single vulnerability. Their power comes from shadows, Maya explained, her voice steady. They hide behind layers of legitimacy, using fear to keep people isolated. But I've traced their money, found the patterns in their shell companies. More importantly, I found others they've threatened, people willing to talk if they know they're not alone. Jason stared at the wall, hope warring with terror in his expression. It's too dangerous. If anything happened to you or the kids. Something's already happening, Maya countered. Every day we let them control us through fear is another day they win. But we have something they don't expect, a network of people fighting back. She showed him messages from other victims, each one a piece of the puzzle. A banker in Seattle, a software developer in Boston, a shipping executive in Miami, all connected by similar stories of coercion and threats. Tomorrow, Maya said, Sarah's contact is arranging a secure meeting with federal investigators. Not local police who might be compromised, but people who specialize in taking down organizations like this. We'll all testify together. Jason sank into a chair, the weight of possibility warring with years of conditioned fear. They'll know. They always know. Let them know, Maya's voice held steel beneath the softness. We're not hiding anymore. We're not running. We're going to stand and fight, not just for us, but for every family they've threatened, every life they've destroyed. She knelt before him, taking his face in her hands. Remember when we first started dating? You told me your favorite thing about software development was finding elegant solutions to complex problems. That's what we're doing now. We're debugging our lives, line by line, until we find the path to freedom. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Emma stood there in her unicorn pajamas, her brother Luke beside her. Mommy? Are you and Daddy fighting? Maya opened her arms, and both children ran to them. Jason joined the embrace, and for a moment, they were just a family holding each other in the darkness. No, sweetheart, Maya whispered, her voice thick with determination. We're not fighting. We're getting stronger together. Later that night, as their children slept between them in the master bedroom, Maya watched Jason finally drift into exhausted slumber. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah, everything set for tomorrow. No turning back now. Maya looked at her family, at the precious lives she would protect at any cost. She typed back a single word, ready. The storm was coming. But this time, they wouldn't face it alone. The fluorescent lights of the federal building cast harsh shadows as Maya sat in the conference room, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The table before her was covered with documents, financial records, surveillance photos, written testimonies from others who had been trapped in the organization's web. Each piece of evidence represented a crack in the foundation of fear they'd lived under for so long. Sarah sat beside her, while Jason paced near the windows. They'd left the twins with Maya's brother James, a corporate lawyer who'd immediately hired private security when she'd finally told him everything. The memory of saying goodbye that morning clutched at her heart, Emma's brave smile, Luke's tight hug, their whispered, "Be careful, Mommy." Special Agent Diana Rodriguez studied the evidence with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is impressive work," she said finally. "You've given us more actionable intelligence than we've gathered in 2 years of investigation." They never expected their victims to connect, Maya explained. They relied on isolation, on each person being too afraid to reach out. But once we started looking, we found others. Everyone had a piece of the puzzle. A knock at the door made them all tense. Marcus Reynolds entered with another man, older, distinguished, with grief etched deep in his face. "This is Robert Chen," Marcus announced. "David Chen's father." Maya felt Jason stop breathing behind her. David Chen, the developer who died 3 years ago, whose death had been ruled a suicide. The warning Tom had used to keep Jason in line. Robert Chen's voice was quiet but firm. "When they killed my son, they thought they'd buried the truth with him. But David was smarter than they knew. He left evidence, encrypted files that could prove what they did. I've been waiting for the right moment, the right people to trust with this information." He placed a USB drive on the table. "Everything's here, names, dates, account numbers." David documented it all. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, this could be the key we need." Combined with Mrs. Nielsen's financial analysis and the other witnesses' testimonies, the room's atmosphere shifted as possibility began to outweigh fear. But Maya knew the most dangerous moment was still ahead. "They'll know something's wrong soon," she said. "When Jason misses their next meeting, when they realize their threats aren't working anymore." "We're prepared for that," Agent Rodriguez assured them. "We have safe houses ready, protective details in place. But you're right, the next 48 hours are critical." Maya felt Jason's hand slip into hers, squeezing gently. They'd come so far from that night in their kitchen, when secrets and fear had threatened to tear them apart. Now, surrounded by allies, they were finally fighting back. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Agent Rodriguez's team moved swiftly, coordinating with other offices, preparing for simultaneous raids across multiple cities. Maya worked alongside them, her analyst's mind finding connections others might miss. As evening approached, Sarah pulled her aside. "The protective detail just reported in. The twins are safe, having dinner with James. They're asking about you." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes for the first time that day. "Tell them." Her voice caught. "Tell them Mommy and Daddy are fixing things. Tell them we'll be home soon." A commotion at the door drew their attention. Marcus burst in, his face grave. "We've got movement." Tom Bradley was just spotted entering Blue Harbor Marina. "He's not alone." Agent Rodriguez's team sprang into action, but Maya's world narrowed to a single, terrible realization. The marina, where they'd threatened Jason, where they'd first shown him the photos of their family. They were sending a message. "This isn't random," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "They're trying to force our hand, make us react emotionally. That's what they did to David Chen, used his fear for his family to drive him into a corner." Jason started toward the door, but Maya caught his arm. "No. That's exactly what they want. But we're not playing their game anymore." She turned to Agent Rodriguez. "They think they're dealing with desperate people acting alone. Let's show them what happens when their victims stand together." The agent nodded, understanding in her eyes. "We move now. All teams, all locations. Take away their shadows, their hiding places. Give them nowhere to run." As law enforcement units mobilized around them, Maya looked at the others in the room, at Sarah's determined face, at Robert Chen's quiet strength, at Jason's growing resolve. They were no longer isolated targets but a united force, each person's courage strengthening the others. Her phone buzzed one last time with a message from the unknown number. "You should have learned from David Chen's mistake." Maya showed it to Agent Rodriguez, who smiled grimly. "Perfect. They just gave us probable cause for an immediate move on the marina." Sometimes the predators get so used to inspiring fear, they forget to be afraid themselves. As they prepared to end this chapter of their lives, Maya thought of her children, safe with James, waiting for their parents to come home. She thought of David Chen, whose final act of courage had helped make this moment possible. She thought of all the other families who would sleep easier after tonight. "Ready?" Jason asked softly beside her. Maya squared her shoulders, feeling the strength of everyone who stood with them. Ready. The time for fear was over. Now it was time for justice. The federal building buzzed with tense energy as teams mobilized for the final operation. Maya sat in a quiet corner, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, watching Jason speak softly with Agent Rodriguez. The harsh fluorescent lights cast deep shadows under his eyes, highlighting the toll of the past months. Sarah appeared beside her, settling into the adjacent chair with the quiet grace that had made her such an effective ally. "The teams are in position at all locations," she murmured. "Rodriguez says they'll move within the hour." Maya nodded, her throat tight with emotion she couldn't express. "The twins called earlier. Emma asked if we'd be home for breakfast tomorrow." Her voice wavered slightly. "Luke said he'd save his pancakes for us, keep them warm in the microwave." Sarah reached over, covering Maya's trembling hands with her own. "Those kids are so much stronger than they know. Just like their mother." "I keep thinking about that night," Maya whispered, "when I first confronted Jason in our kitchen. How close we came to losing everything because of fear. If I hadn't pushed, if he hadn't finally opened up." "But you did push," Sarah reminded her gently. "And he did open up. That's what matters now." Across the room, Robert Chen sat with his laptop, methodically working through his son's encrypted files. His face held a complicated mix of grief and determination, a father ensuring his son's last act of courage would not be in vain. Agent Rodriguez approached their corner, her movements precise and controlled. "We've got confirmation. Tom Bradley and his associates are gathering at the marina. Our surveillance suggests they're expecting Jason to show up with the documentation they demanded." Maya stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that had finally stopped shaking. "They still think they're dealing with isolated, frightened people. That's always been their weakness, underestimating the strength of connections, of family, of love." The next hour passed in a blur of coordinated activity. Maya worked with the technical team, her analyst's mind catching subtle patterns in the data streams. Jason stood by her side, his software expertise helping decode the last pieces of David Chen's encrypted testament. As the teams prepared for deployment, Maya pulled Jason into a quiet corridor. The harsh institutional lighting softened as she reached up to straighten his collar, a gesture so normal, so domestic, it made her heart ache. "Whatever happens tonight," she said softly, "remember that moment in our kitchen. When you chose trust over fear. When we decided to face this together." Jason caught her hands, pressing them against his chest where she could feel his heart beating steady and strong. "I remember thinking I had to protect you by keeping you in the dark. I was so wrong. You were never someone who needed protection, you were always the protector." Maya leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "We protect each other. That's what family means." A discreet cough interrupted them. Marcus stood at the corridor's end, his expression gentle but urgent. "It's time." They returned to the main room, where Agent Rodriguez was delivering final instructions to her teams. Robert Chen had closed his laptop, his face showing a peace that hadn't been there before. "David's evidence is complete," he said quietly as Maya approached. "Everything he fought to expose, everything he died trying to protect, it's all here. Tonight, his sacrifice means something." Maya squeezed his shoulder, feeling the weight of all their stories converging in this moment, David Chen's courage, her family's resilience, the strength they'd found in standing together. The room hummed with purposeful energy as the operation launched. Maya watched the tactical screens, her hand firmly clasped in Jason's, as years of fear and intimidation began crumbling under the weight of justice. Sarah appeared at her other side, her presence steady and reassuring. "The protective detail just checked in. The twins are asleep, safe in James's guest room. He says they insisted on leaving the porch light on for you both. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were different from the tears of fear she'd shed so many nights before. These were tears of hope, of endings and new beginnings. As reports began flowing in, arrests at the marina, simultaneous raids across the city, the systematic dismantling of the organization's power, Maya thought of Emma and Luke sleeping peacefully, dreaming of breakfast with their parents. She thought of the long journey from that first moment of confrontation in their kitchen to this night of resolution. "We're really going home," Jason whispered, his voice full of wonder. Maya tightened her grip on his hand, feeling the strength of their bond, the power of truth over fear, love over intimidation. "Yes," she said softly. "We're going home." The morning sun painted soft ribbons of light across Maya and Jason's kitchen as they sat with Emma and Luke, sharing the promised breakfast. The microwave-warmed pancakes were a bit rubbery, but to Maya, they tasted like victory. Like home. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the raids. The headlines had slowly faded, but the deeper changes, the ones that mattered most, were still unfolding in quiet moments like this. Luke carefully spread syrup in elaborate patterns, his face scrunched in concentration. "Dad, when can I help with your computers again?" His voice held a trace of uncertainty that made Maya's heart ache. Jason reached across the table, gently ruffling their son's hair. "Soon, buddy. But this time, we'll do it right. Build something honest, something that helps people." Emma, always the more perceptive of the twins, studied her parents with serious eyes. "The bad people aren't coming back, are they?" Maya set down her coffee cup, choosing her words carefully. "No, sweetheart. Those people are facing consequences for their choices. And more importantly, we learned something valuable, that being brave doesn't mean facing scary things alone. It means trusting the people who love you to help carry the burden." As if summoned by her words, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. The preliminary hearings were proceeding smoothly. Tom Bradley and his associates were cooperating, their network of intimidation crumbling as more victims came forward, each story strengthening the others. Robert Chen had called yesterday, his voice lighter than she'd ever heard it. The evidence from his son's files had proven instrumental in dismantling the organization's financial structure. "David can rest now," he'd said softly. "And I can finally remember him with pride instead of pain." The sound of children's laughter pulled Maya back to the present. Emma and Luke were attempting to create a pancake tower, their earlier solemnity forgotten in the simple joy of being kids again. Jason caught her eye across the table, his smile holding a depth of understanding that brought tears to her throat. They'd both been seeing a counselor, learning to process the trauma of those frightening months. Some nights still brought nightmares, moments when the shadows seemed to hold threatening shapes. But they faced them together now, their bond stronger for having been tested. "Mom." Emma's voice was hesitant. "Can we have a movie night tonight? Like we used to?" Maya felt the last piece of her heart slide back into place. "Of course, baby. With popcorn and blanket forts and everything." Later, as she watched her family curled up together on the couch, the soft glow of the television painting their faces in gentle light, Maya reflected on their journey. They'd emerged not just survivors, but stronger, wiser, more deeply connected than before. The porch light still burned each night, no longer a beacon guiding them home, but a reminder of the darkness they'd faced and overcome together. A testament to the power of love over fear, truth over secrets, and the quiet strength found in standing together. Maya snuggled closer to Jason, feeling Emma's small hand slip into hers as Luke's soft snores filled the peaceful silence. They were home, truly home, in all the ways that mattered most. And in the gentle darkness of their living room, surrounded by the warmth of family and the promise of tomorrow, Maya finally let herself exhale fully for the first time in months. The future stretched before them, not shadowed by fear but bright with possibility, each day a new chapter in their story of survival, resilience, and love. "We made it," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Jason squeezed her hand gently. "We did more than make it," he murmured. "We showed the twins what real strength looks like. What family really means." Emma stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep. Maya stroked her daughter's hair, thinking of all the lessons embedded in their ordeal, lessons about courage, about trust, about the kind of love that faces darkness without flinching. They would carry scars, certainly. But they would also carry wisdom, strength, and an unshakable knowledge of their own resilience. And that, Maya knew, was a legacy worth every moment of their journey home.